Welcome to the Alumni Lounge. I'm your host, David Carafa, the podcast that brings you fascinating conversations with extraordinary individuals who have walked the halls of success at Lyons Township High School. On today's episode, we've got Dan White, a video engineer at Mobile TV Group in Chicago.
Hey, I'm Dan White. I'm LT class of 2013, and today I'm a engineer at Mobile TV Group.
All right, so DW.
That's me.
When did you graduate from LT?
I graduated from LT in 2013. We had a good number of folks. We had like Matt Koziard, Steph McDonald, Camille Suknovich, and all of my friends that I'm forgetting that I'm sorry. But, I'm not usually in front of the camera. I'm kind of a behind the camera guy, right? Give me some slack.
What was the LTTV experience like when you started?
When I started at LTTV, that was probably back in 2010. Tim Jacobs still worked there, Chris Velasquez. And, I took the class because I knew they had Macs, and I was like, I love Macs. I want to use a Mac. Mm-hmm. So I took it. That was all cool, editing and such. But when I went to my first truck shoot, that's when it really took off. It was with it was soccer at whatever the soccer field is called. I assume
Westfield.
That's the one. See,
yeah,
Crawford, you're the knowledge. I'm the guy in the orange shirt. Did truck shows my first semester at LTTV and kind of took off from there. Did a whole bunch of shows. Sophomore year, junior year, senior year, so on and so forth. It was really cool.
Yeah,
I liked it.
How was the connection between LTTV and what you do now?
The connection between LTTV and what I do now. Well, it's interesting, right? It's funny when you start going backwards in time and figure out these pivotal moments of your life you don't know until down the road. Mm-hmm. If Rebecca had never told me I would never direct a football game, would I be where I am today? I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I've ever told that story on camera. I have now, at least the one sentence of it.
Yeah, well, tell that story, Dan.
Tell the story?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rebecca, who we all know and love, she's amazing. She was what did we call it? The department head of sports?
Yeah,
something she was in management at LTTV when I started. And I actually had met her socially outside of TV. And so she kind of brought me in and showed me a bunch of gave me the tour and all that real stuff. But then when I was taking the class as a sophomore, I was very ambitious. I was a new kid and
mm-hmm.
I get it. We're in high school. There's some young, really ambitious guy. They kind of had to knock me down, make sure I knew my place. It's high school, right? These things happen. And she told me Dan, you'll never direct football. And I remember thinking okay, I'll see if I can. And I don't remember the first football game I'll direct, I'll be honest. But I do know that it happened before I graduated LT, and that was a personal victory.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that could have been one of those pivotal moments where maybe that gave me the ambition to go where I am today. But to your question, the LTTV to now. LTTV is really cool. And when I was there, we had really, really interesting stuff, and I didn't even know it on the equipment side of things. Being the engineer, I'm a nerd. That shit kind of vibes with me. We had Sony D55s that were Triax CCD cameras. We had 4 camera chains. We had a Grass Valley switcher, and I don't remember what we did for sound or graphics. Replay was actual tape at the time. But that Sony D55 was a really good learning tool that I took for granted because I was young and dumb and didn't know any better. And I didn't realize how important that was until kind of 2 things later in life. When I went to college, the cameras we had were worse. And when I was talking to Sean Robinson, hopefully a future guest on this show, if he ever comes back to Chi-Town, that I got Sean on like a gig, and this was, I don't know, say fucking 2021. He got a gig and he went to go use a cam op for, I think it was a telethon. It was a pro build. It was some sort of Sony cam, full build, lens, all that stuff. And I talked to him after the fact. I was like, yeah, this. And he's like, how'd you like it, Sean? What'd you do? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, it's really cool. I had never used that kind of camera before. It was kind of intimidating. And I was like taken back. Because like at my time at LTTV, I had used big Sony, CCU cameras. But those went away. They went away when I was there. And I didn't know like how valuable that tool was. And in hindsight, not that I would change anything anyone did or like say that was a bad decision, but like I have the benefit of knowing that keeping those cams would have been a really valuable educational tool. But that's not telling the whole story, right? Like at the time we were in the middle of the HD revolution that like kind of Apple was leading the way on, and getting to HD kind of at all cost was very important, and everyone was doing it. And we didn't know that 10 years in the future I would be thinking, wishing we had kept those CCU cams.
Where did you go to college?
College, yeah. I went to school at Western Illinois University in Macomb, Illinois. And credit where credit's due. Buzz Hoon was the kind of leading the charge on that, because he emailed Bill on a whim, I think. And like, hey, you got any students, doing TV, blah, blah, blah. And Bill was kind of he was very respectful about it, but he was kind of like throwing his weight around a little bit. Like, yeah, we do have students, but like LTTV has a production truck. We do 80 shows a year. We cover all of our home sports. Like, we have a high standard. And Buzz Hoon was like, well, fuck it, we do the same shit. We got a production truck. We do all of our home sports. We do replays. We have a news department. We do news at the time 2 times a week. That got upgraded to 3 times a week while I was there. So Buzz was like, he was not going to take it laying down. He was like, yeah, we do shit. And Bill's like, all right, cool. So I don't remember how the conversation went, but I was like, I'll go down and check it out and see. And walked around. It looked like any other school. And I was like, I guess, sure. At the time, I wasn't like the most sold on going to school.
Yeah.
My mom wanted me to go more than I did, which now that I've done it, I understand why. And it has nothing to do with like the diploma or the classroom. That shit's all secondary.
Did you finish college?
Yeah, I did finish college. I graduated in 2017. From there, I went. What did I do? That's a good question. Why are you asking all the hard questions, Graffa? Like timelines and memory. So I graduated in college in 2017, and then I spent a year up here in the suburbs of Chicago, freelancing. I think at that time I worked for Bill, and just every other company in the book. Rush, Tupelo Raycom at the time, now Tupelo Honey, Chef Tech, Digital Impact Video, no PPI at that point in my career, but did that for almost exactly a year. And then I was working for Chef Tech down in Peoria as a freelancer, like a cam op, and was out at lunch, as you do on every show, and was talking to the owner about just nerdy shit. I think it was the Black Magic Ursas. They hadn't come out yet, and we just like spitballing about like, oh, they can do this, and for the price they can do this, and like it's a really good option. And I was just a nerd, so I was all about it. And then that was probably in, I'm gonna say February. No, not February. What's the month after February? March? Is it?
Yeah.
I'm dyslexic and stupid, which is a bad combination. We'll say March. So yeah. Did that show in March, and then while I was at NAB with Bill and Tim Jacobs, I get an email from the guys like, "Hey, you want to be an engineer?" I remember thinking like, "Why?" Like I'd never done this before. But he's like, "Yeah, we talked about those cameras, and you just sort of seem knowledgeable, so I want to know if you're interested." Come to find out later, yes, he was absolutely looking for an engineer, and the timing was just because his wife was like 7 months pregnant at the time of the email. So he like really needed to get someone on to kind of take over while he was on leave. But that's beside the point. I ended up taking his offer, and then June of 18 moved to Peoria, worked for that company June of 18 up until sometime in 2020 when the world kind of fell apart. I don't remember the exact departure date, but it wasn't clear, right? Like there was like the payroll protection program and other various supplements and stuff. Like I was full-time for some time, then I was part-time, then I was like technically full-time again because there was a grant or whatever. And I do remember being like, all right, we have to have this conversation. So I like went into the office at some point and be like, all right, like I think that old position has been dissolved. Like I don't work for you anymore. And he's like, yeah, I kind of agree. It was still very unknown at that time, and I don't remember what time that conversation took place. I think it was late 2020, but that could have been in 2021 when I was like, do I actually work for you anymore? But it was a ton of fun working at Chef Tech. We had 2 trucks doing 5 camera shows, lots of college and high school football, basketball, very similar to LTTV.
You enjoy sports production.
I do it from time to time. Yeah.
How is that?
Sports production, we do it all the time. So today I'm a engineer at Mobile TV Group, the production truck provider based out of, well, the corporate headquarters in Denver, but they sell coast to coast like all truck providers. And my truck is 47 Flex that this year is doing the Chicago Cubs over the summer. That's like a home client. So I do sports all the time. I don't really care about sports. I don't really follow them. I don't really know a lot of things.
But you know how to shoot them.
Yeah, I know how to fix broken things. We make it work. And yeah.
What would you say is the most challenging about what you do?
Probably the most challenging thing about what I do is communicating, right? Like we're all humans, right? Like it's hard to communicate in kind of all aspects of life. This is by no means isolated to being an engineer, but when someone comes to me with a problem and just says like the camera isn't working, like, can you be more specific? Well, a baseball flew through the lens. Okay, well, thank you for the update. Yeah, like we got to work with that. That's probably a pretty big challenge that I run into regularly, is just trying to talk and figure shit out. On the actual engineering side of things, it's not anything super crazy. Like, yeah, there's complicated systems. We have an IP-based truck. We got a whole boatload of cameras, a whole boatload of sources and stuff of that nature. And I don't want to think about the audio side of things. Definitely the human aspect is more challenging than the technical aspect.
Tell me a little bit about what you do at Mobile TV Group.
What do I do at Mobile TV Group? I do long days. One like thing that kind of I knew going in, but still kind of punches you in the gut sometimes, is like you're the first person in, last person out. So we'll have the other day we were doing a show on Peacock, not NBC. Peacock.
What's that?
I think it's like the Netflix of NBC.
Oh.
Because there's now 50 of them.
Yeah.
And it's never going to take off. People are just going to go back to pirating everything, and there's no hope. But we did a show on that, and they moved the game up to noon. So crew call was 5 a.m., but the engineers are always 1 hour before that. Unless we're doing something that's called a duel, then we're 2 hours before that. This wasn't the case for the Peacock show. But I had to get up at 4 a.m. No, to be there at 4 a.m., which means I had to wake up at 3 a.m., which is great. Because everyone loves waking up at 3 a.m. So you do, as the engineer, you get long days. You just open the truck up. You basically just set everyone else up for success, right? Turn everything on. People will come in, start, building their aspect of the show, whether it be graphics, tape, audio. Audio's got a ton of work. There's just always like audio is more important than video.
Mm-hmm.
Like we knew that for back in the LT days, but it really is. So I think the audio folks are kind of undercredited on the TV side of things. But no, yeah, like a normal day for me is if we're setting up, the truck will always almost always be there beforehand. Like the driver likes to park and power at like midnight because there's no traffic or anything. So he'll do that, and he'll then it boils down to like logistics if they do it day before or days before. But so yeah, I show up, the truck's there, it's already expanded, the stairs already out, power's usually plugged in. We start the truck up, which takes like 45 minutes to go from cold and dark to like operating to a point where people can come in and start doing their jobs. Because we have to we have an IP truck, which one of the like things you have to do with an IP truck is have consistent timing or time code or gen lock and shit like across everything. Because from like a data perspective, and I'm probably getting this wrong, if you're just sending data, like you need to know when it happens, in like what frame to show in a row and what time. So like reference and PTP is super important in IP trucks, and we have to start up a universal clock, make sure it's set correctly, make sure the time zones are correct. I say time zones because there's like 10 different places you have to set a time zone. It's really annoying. You also use that universal clock to set whatever kind of show you're doing in terms of like resolution and frame rate and shit. So you do 720p, 1080p, 1080i. You set that on the clock, reboot the clock, make sure the backup clock syncs the right time. Then you can start booting everything else up. Network switches and stuff take a while. EVSs take a while because they kind of like rebuild every time you boot them up. So it's on a set day, it's like bringing everything up from cold and dark. And then, I've talked about people building their shows. Right? Like the audio perspective, you have to like physically build a booth kit, but you also have to like route where on your fader bars where you want certain mics and groups and all that stuff. With graphics, you got to plug in all the stats because there's stats or something in sports. I don't really know, but you got to build your show. From the engineering side of things, everything can always change, right? So like we sort of build like what is camera 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and all that. And we match the camera to whatever CCU it is. And we build that kind of like base level infrastructure that other people can pull from, right? The tape guys can route themselves, camera 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. But we have to make sure that when they push camera 1, it actually goes to the correct CCU as opposed to just the one that it was last time, because it's not always the same. And that's the kind of infrastructure the engineers build. Also, stuff like internet, lights, air conditioning, that kind of stuff. So that's set up, and then if your engineer is bored doing the show, that's a good sign because that means nothing's going wrong. So ideally, during the show, like during the baseball game or whatever, like if everything's going well, I'm watching this show. You see that little plug? Yeah.
What advice would you have to somebody that's looking to get into the sports production industry?
Advice for someone who's looking to get into the sports production industry. There's another question I don't know if I've ever been asked. It might be kind of cheesy to say, but like follow your heart. Like as I talked about earlier in the show, like everyone I work with enjoys what they do, and a lot of us are passionate about it. If you're passionate about doing shows in TV production, you'll sort of like cut your own path, right? There's not like do this so you can go to like this and like climb this company ladder, any of that crap. It's just if you're passionate about it, you'll be off to the races.
Yeah.
And as I kind of hinted at earlier, one of the really valuable things about going to school that's not classroom or anything is a lot of the people you meet.
The networking. And
especially in a place like college where everyone is coming together and we're all excited about TV. We all want to do it. Like, we're all pushing to create the best shows that we can. Kind of like we're doing today. It's you just get a lot of, folks who are really trying to do as much as they possibly can. And then, everyone after college, everyone kind of shotguns, right? Like a whole bunch of friends went into the news side of things. A couple of us went into production, and that's like what started my network today, right? Like Mario, my roommate, he was a hustler, right? Like, he adjusted his schedule freshman year so that he could graduate in 3 years and then be working after that. I mean, that didn't slow him down. He was off doing shows immediately. And like his last year at school, he was hardly around. And if he was like on his computer, like building graphics for some show like in the future.
Yeah.
Mario Claro actually pioneered Good Morning Macomb, which was a morning news show that we did at Western. When I started, they did an evening news show at like 4 o'clock or something, like Tuesday and Thursday. And he pioneered Good Morning Macomb, which was the 9 a.m. Friday morning show. So now, I don't know if they still do that today. It'd be interesting to find out if they still do those 3 shows. But he led the charge on that. And of course, he graduated and went off in networking. And Dan Niederkorn was from Western. John Ott went to Western. And the 4 of us are really the production-heavy grads that I know from Western. I'm sure there's plenty others, but those are the ones kind of in my circle.
What are you looking forward to in the future?
I'm looking forward to going back to NAB. I like Vegas a lot. It's a really cool time to see a lot of friends. And I haven't been because COVID. But yeah, that's absolutely something I'm looking forward to right now. But I'm kind of a live by the day kind of guy, right? Like, I'm just shooting from the hip. I'll do anything at any time. Like, I'm looking forward to NAB, but between now and next April, which is like 10 months if you're keeping track at home, like, I don't know.
Well, thanks for coming on the Alumni Lounge, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Where stories collide and memories reside.